All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we're going to speak about Lord Shiva, because we celebrated already, and we're going to do again tonight, the Shivaratri, the night of Lord Shiva. And the Shiva Tattva, or the truth about Lord Shiva, is somewhat complicated, just like the truth about Durga or Maya Devi is also extremely complicated, because you're dealing with something that is illusory. So whenever you deal with something that's illusory, it becomes very complicated, because an illusion is something that appears to be true but is not really true. So one time this Vaishnava guru said, there are three things that are inconceivable. One, the position of Lord Shiva. Two, the internal potency of love and devotion of Krishna, Hiladini Shakti. And three, Guru Tattva, the truth about Guru. And so today we're going to talk about one of those things that is very difficult to understand. That is Lord Shiva, who is a very unique personality in the Vedic history. So, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 20, there is information given about Lord Shiva. And it says, that Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, expands a portion of his plenary portion, and accepting the association of the material mode of ignorance, assumes the form of Rudra to dissolve the cosmic manifestation. Rudra is another name of Lord Shiva. So, in order to understand how Krishna expands himself infinitely, you have what are called plenary expansions of the Lord. So this word plenary in English means absolute. In other words, there's no difference in any aspect. So when Krishna expands himself to dance with the gopis in the Rasa Lila dance, those are plenary expansions of Krishna. They're non-different than himself. Now, yogis are able to expand themselves 9 times. But each expansion of the yogi, it's a mystical power that they have, that top yogis have. But each expansion of yogi is like a mirror reflection. Each one does and looks exactly the same, and does exactly the same thing at the same time. Just like if you look at yourself in the mirror, whatever you do, your mirror reflection does the same thing. However, when Krishna expands himself, each expansion is non-different than him, and each expansion can do different things at the same time. Like, for example, one time Narada Muni heard that when Krishna was in Dwarka, he married 16,108 wives. He built 16,108 different palaces. He was simultaneously present with 16,108 wives. Narada Muni couldn't believe it. He said, it's hard to believe someone can do this. So he actually went to Dwarka to see this. And when he went there, he went to the first palace of Krishna and Rukmini. And Krishna was there, he greeted Narada Muni, and he was he worshipped Narada Muni with his wife Rukmini. And then Narada Muni said, well, thank you very much for receiving me so nicely. Now I have to go. I'll see you later. Actually he meant I'll see you soon, because I'm going to the next palace to see you also. So he goes to the next palace, and there Krishna is with another wife. By the way, in each palace he had his wife and he had his kids. He had 10 sons with each wife. So he goes to the second palace, and there's Krishna, and there he's doing something different. He's playing with his kids. But when he sees Narada Muni again, he and his wife worship him, and then Narada Muni is amazed, because he just left one palace and he saw Krishna doing something different. Now he comes to the next palace, and again it's the same Krishna, but he's doing something different, and with a different wife and a different set of kids. So he visited many of the palaces of Krishna and Dwarka, and every time it was the same Krishna doing something different simultaneously, and he was totally bewildered. And he could see that Krishna has this incredible, inconceivable potency that no one else can emulate. And similarly, when Krishna danced with the gopis, it was the same Krishna dancing with each gopi, and each gopi thought he's only dancing with me. Again, there was over 16,000 gopis. So no one else can do this. And because of that, Krishna's transcendental potency is bewildering to people. And these type of expansions of Krishna are called plenary expansions, where it's the same Krishna doing different things. Now, besides this type of expansion, there are other expansions of Krishna in which there's a slight difference, such as Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna. It's a plenary expansion. Plenary means Balaram has the same power as Krishna, but he has a different complexion. He's whitish, and Krishna is darkish. So that's another type of plenary expansion. Then there are plenary expansions of Krishna where it has the same power, but there are more pronounced differences. Like, for example, Lord Narayana is Krishna. He has almost the same power as Krishna, but he has 4 arms. And then there are other expansions that have an opulence of Krishna, but not the same power. So you have Vyasadeva. He's an expansion of Krishna. He's called a Shaktavasha, but he has the literary power of Krishna, but not all the other power. Yes.
What about incarnations like Lord Ram or Narsimha? Where do they fall?
They are plenary expansions, but they don't have all the same pastimes as Krishna. Like, did you ever see Lord Rama play the flute? Huh? No. There are certain things that Lord Rama doesn't do that Krishna does, right? So there are many categories. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but you see there's plenary expansions, partial plenary expansions, and partial plenary expansions. So there are many different categories of expansions of Krishna. Now, we are also expanded from Krishna, but we're not either plenary or partial plenary expansions of Krishna. However, we can receive, like Vyasadeva, one of Krishna's powers. So Vyasadeva, I said, is a jiva like us, an individual, minute living entity who's received the power, the literary power from Krishna. So he's also considered an incarnation of the Lord, but a special type, which is called a Shaktavish avatar, that has one specific attribute of the Lord, and therefore he's also considered an incarnation, but obviously not on the same level as Krishna, because he doesn't have all the power of the Lord. Okay, so Lord Shiva is an expansion of Lord Krishna, just like you and I are, but he's different than us. First of all, Lord Shiva is Amara. He's eternal. He doesn't die. So that's one major difference between us and Lord Shiva. On the other hand, Lord Shiva is slightly influenced by the mode of ignorance. That's what differentiates him from Krishna. Krishna is never influenced by the mode of ignorance, or any of the modes. So, therefore, here it says, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 20, verse number 307. And it says, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, expands a portion of his plenary portion, and accepting the association of the material mode of ignorance, assumes the form of Rudra, and Rudra is another name of Shiva, to dissolve the cosmic manifestation. And Prabhupada writes, this is a description of the Rudra form, which is another expansion of Krishna. Only Vishnu Murtis are expansions of Krishna's personal and plenary portions. Mahavishnu, who lies in the causal ocean, is an expansion of Sankarsana. When Garbhodakshaya Vishnu accepts the material modes of nature for the purpose of dissolving the cosmic manifestation, his form is called Rudra. As already explained, Lord Vishnu is the controller of Maya. How then can he associate with Maya? The conclusion is that the incarnation of Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma indicates the absence of the supreme power of Vishnu. When the supreme power is not there, it is possible to associate with Maya, the external energy. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are to be considered creations of Maya. Okay, so here he mentioned several things. He mentioned Sankarsana, and then he mentioned Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And he mentioned Mahavishnu, who's an expansion of Sankarsana, and then he mentions Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So to understand that, Krishna expands himself as Lord Balaram. That's his first expansion. Then Lord Balaram expands himself into Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Now these expansions, Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna, Aniruddha, have 4 arms. They're Vishnu or Narayana expansions. They have almost exactly the same power of as Krishna does. Not quite, but almost. But they have a different form. And they have different functions. So in the spiritual, and then after those expansions, there's a second expansion of these 4 forms. And that second expansion of these 4 forms is for the material creation. So in the material creation, you have Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So this gets a little complicated. But obviously, to understand God, you're dealing with something that's inconceivable. It's not something that we can conceive because it's way beyond our power of perception, as well as anything that we could ever emulate. Emulate means equal, become equal to. And in any case, Lord Shiva is expanded from Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who's the second expansion of Vishnu in the material world for the material creation. So, Shiva is the controller of Maya, or Durga Devi. But sometimes he becomes overwhelmed by her also. But then, again, due to his superior power, he's able to master her. So, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are both slightly influenced by the material nature. Shiva is considered the son of Lord Brahma, but yet Shiva is superior to Lord Brahma because he's eternal, and Lord Brahma is mortal. Lord Brahma is like us. He's an individual jiva, but who has come to near perfection of 78 qualities of Krishna. Krishna has 78% of Krishna's qualities. Krishna has 64 transcendental qualities, and he possesses them in full. Brahma, being one of us, the individual minute living entities, is able to achieve 78% of those 64 qualities, or around 50 of those 64 qualities. Not in full like Krishna, but at least in a greater degree than any of us so far. But our potential in life is to be able to come up to the level of Lord Brahma. Then Lord Shiva possesses 84% of those 64 qualities, meaning something around 50, I think, 3 of those transcendental qualities. So he is superior to Lord Brahma. And Vishnu Shiva has up to 55% of those 64 qualities. And Lord Narayana, or Vishnu, has up to 60 of those 64 qualities. And Krishna has 100% of those 64 qualities. And what are the extra 4 that Krishna has that Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu or Narayana don't? Number 1 is he has incredible pastimes that are way beyond the imagination of anyone. And it supersedes even the pastimes of Lord Narayana or Shiva or Brahma. Number 2, he can play the flute. But when he plays the flute, everyone becomes enchanted, including Lord Shiva and Brahma and Narayana. And number 3, he's surrounded by an incredible number of devotees who have an unbelievable manifestation of love for him. And number 4, his beauty is so enchanting and sweet that it just overwhelms everyone, including Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Vishnu and Narayana. So, now continuing with Lord Shiva, it says here, Rudra, Lord Shiva, has various forms, which are transformations brought about by association with Maya. Although Rudra is not on a level with the Jiva Tattvas, meaning he's not on our level and he's superior to us, he still cannot be considered a personal expansion of Lord Krishna. When we say personal expansion, he's talking in terms of a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. Rudra is simultaneously one with and different from Vishnu Tattva. Due to his association with Maya, he's different from the Vishnu Tattva, but at the same time, he is an expansion of Krishna's personal form. This situation is called Beta Abeta Tattva, or Achintya Beta Abeta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. Now this is where it gets really confusing when you talk about Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is actually on both sides of the, let's say, the creation of Krishna. He's inside the material world, and he's also in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, he's known as Sadashiva. He's a expansion of Krishna known in the Narayana form. And the material world, he's known as Shiva or Rudra, and he's influenced by the modes of material nature, a little bit by the mode of ignorance. So now it becomes really confusing to try and understand him, because he's on both sides. He's in the spiritual world and he's in the material world. And it says, Rudra is simultaneously one and with and different from Vishnu Tattva, from Lord Vishnu. Due to his association with Maya, he's different from the Vishnu Tattva, but at the same time he's an expansion of Krishna's personal form. This situation is called Beta Abeta Tattva, or Achintya Beta Abeta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. So this principle of simultaneous one and difference is applicable all over the spiritual and material world. And it is bewildering to people like us. It's not bewildering to Krishna, but it's bewildering to us, because we don't have that power of being simultaneously one and different. Like, for example, we're not simultaneously one and different from our body. We're definitely different than the body. Right? But in the case of Krishna, he's simultaneously one and different from his body. He's one in the sense that he's never under the influence of the material nature. He's different in that he can expand millions of forms that are non-different than himself. But they look different, but they're non-different than themselves. So we don't have that power. And one such expansion like that is Lord Shiva. Now, it says, milk is transformed into yogurt when it associates with a yogurt culture. This yogurt is nothing but milk, but still it is not milk. And then in the purport, Prabhupada explains, of the three deities supervising the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the universe, Lord Vishnu is never separate from the original Vishnu. However, Lord Shiva and Brahma, due to their association with Maya, are different from Vishnu. So here, Prabhupada is explaining very clearly that if it was possible for Krishna to be influenced by the material nature, he would be called Shiva. But Krishna is never influenced by the material nature. But one expansion of Krishna's is Shiva, and he does become influenced somewhat by the material nature. Another expansion of Krishna is you and me. Right? We are expanded from Krishna. Mamaivam sa jiva bhuta jiva loka sanatana. It says, Mama eva amsa, we are the fragment or part and parcel of Krishna, and we're eternal. But we have the tendency to be conditioned by the material nature. So we're also an expansion of Krishna, but we're in a marginal position because we can be influenced by the material nature, whereas Krishna himself is never influenced by the material nature. And Lord Shiva, who's superior to us, and Lord Brahma also, they're both slightly influenced by the material nature. So it says here, Lord Vishnu is never separate from the original Vishnu, meaning never influenced by material nature. However, Lord Shiva and Brahma, due to their association with Maya, are different from Vishnu. Vishnu cannot be transformed into any form of material energy. Whenever there is association with Maya, the personality involved must be different from Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are called Guna avatars, for they associate with the material qualities. The conclusion is that Rudra is not exactly Lord Vishnu, but rather a transformation of Vishnu. Therefore, he does not come under the category of the Vishnu Tattvas. Thus, he is inconceivably one with Vishnu and different from him. The example given in this verse is very clear. Milk is compared to Vishnu, and as soon as milk touches a sour substance, it becomes yogurt, or Lord Shiva. Although yogurt is constitutionally milk, it cannot be used in place of milk. So once you have yogurt, you can't go back to milk. But yogurt itself is non-different than a milk. Right? So Shiva does not have all the transcendental qualities of Krishna, but he does have some. But those are slightly influenced by the modes of material nature. And now, Lord Chaitanya quotes a verse from the Brahma Samhita. Shiram yata dadadi vikara vishesa yoga sanjayate nahitata pritagasti etu ya sambhutam apitata samapaitikayat govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. And this says, milk changes into yogurt when mixed with the yogurt culture, but actually it is constitutionally nothing but milk. Similarly, Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, assumes the form of Lord Shiva, Sambhu, for the special purpose of material transactions. I offer my obeisances at his lotus feet. So this is a quotation from the Brahma Samhita, verse 45. Next verse. Lord Shiva is an associate of the external energy. Therefore, he is absorbed in the material quality of darkness. Lord Vishnu is transcendental to Maya and the qualities of Maya. Therefore, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Vishnu is beyond the range of the material manifestation, and he is not within the control of the material energy. He is the Supreme Independent Personality of Godhead. This is admitted even by Sankaracharya, Narayana Parovyaktat. Sankaracharya, who's an incarnation of Vishnu, of Shiva, was ordered by Narayana or Krishna to come to the material world and spread the philosophy of Mayavada, impersonalism. Why was he ordered like that? Well, the reason is that at one point in Kali Yuga, after about 2,500 years, or 2,500 years ago, because we're around 5,000 years into Kali Yuga, the practice of Vedic Dharma deteriorated seriously. And in the name of religion, the Vedic Brahmanas were performing fire sacrifices in which they were offering animals like cows. And the cows were being killed. And then they were offering the cow meat as prasadam to the people. So this began a serious downward spiral of the practice of Vedic Dharma. And so, in order to stop this, Krishna incarnated as Lord Buddha and rejected the following of the Vedas in order to stop the false following that was going on at that time, and to spread the philosophy of ahimsa, non-violence. Why did he do that? Because by this time, the deviation from Vedic Dharma was so serious, and it was based on the personal benefit of the errant Brahmanas. The errant, meaning the deviating Brahmanas, were making a lot of money by performing these animal sacrifices. Now, where did this come from? There were animal sacrifices in previous ages, but the Brahmanas were qualified, and they would sacrifice an old cow into the fire, and holding onto its tail as it was burning, they would say Vedic mantras, and they would pull out the cow, rejuvenate it into a young calf. And that was the proof that their Vedic mantras were correctly said. So they had the power of killing and rejuvenating from death. But when you come into Kali Yuga, which began 5,000 years ago, they lost that purity and power. Therefore, even though you're not supposed to perform animal sacrifices or human sacrifices in Kali Yuga, they continued doing it. And instead of pulling out a rejuvenated calf, they pulled out a barbecue. So then they said, well, this is prasadam, you can eat this. So they were promoting meat eating in the name of religion and making a lot of money doing it. In previous ages, there was also human sacrifice permitted. But again, the sacrifice of humans the human beings were brought back to life after the sacrifice by the power of the Brahmins. But that power was lost when Kali Yuga began. Therefore, human sacrifice, animal sacrifice was all forbidden in Kali Yuga. But they continued to do these type of sacrifices because it was very lucrative. They could make a lot of money doing it. But actually, they were not able to rejuvenate anyone. So, to stop this, see, when there's money involved in something, in a deviation, it's almost impossible to stop it because of the money incentive. So what did Lord Buddha do? He just canceled all the Vedic authority. He said, if the Vedas are teaching like this, which they're not, but they were being misinterpreted like that, then he said, then I reject the Vedas. So he pulled the rug out from under the feet of all the Brahmins, the deviant Brahmins. And he began to teach the principle of ahimsa, non-violence. But that's not Vedic Dharma. You know, it's a part of Vedic Dharma. Non-violence is definitely a part of Vedic Dharma. But Vedic Dharma does not reject Vedic scriptures. So then comes Sankaracharya, 1,000 years after Brahma. And he was ordered by Lord Narayana to bewilder the Buddhists. By this time, Buddhism had been functioning for 1,000 years. All of India basically was following Buddhism. And so Sankaracharya comes and says, look, if your goal is to become like a god, so that is what Buddhism is. It's religion without God, but it's all about self-improvement, where you can become a Buddha. A Buddha means someone who is more or less free of the modes of material nature. So, you know, if you study Buddhism today, you'll see, you know, they start talking about attaining Buddhahood, right? You can become like a Buddha by doing the meditation and retracting your senses from sense objects and so forth, and practicing non-violence. So it's a self-improvement religion. It's a religion without God, but it's a religion in which there's tremendous scope for self-improvement, where you become almost free of sinful activity, and you live very much in the mode of goodness, and you withdraw from interaction with the material nature. So anyway, Sankaracharya said, look, if you don't, he reestablished the authority of the Vedas, but he taught the Vedic philosophy with a Buddhist interpretation. In other words, an impersonal interpretation. Why? Because Buddhists do not believe in the existence of a soul, of eternal soul. They do believe in karma, and they do believe that one can evolve, but more on the mental level than on the spiritual level. So Buddhism is basically atheistic. However, it has some limited benefits, but it does reject the existence of God. It rejects the existence of the individual soul also. So Sankaracharya reestablishes the existence of soul, but he says there's only one soul, and that's Brahman. And individuality, he has an interpretation of individuality like the Buddhists. It's actually illusory. And he says that, and therefore he comes up with the doctrine of illusion. The doctrine of illusion says that everything you're seeing is actually an illusion, including yourself. There's only one soul that's called Brahman. And by rejecting everything in the material world, you can return back to your original state of oneness, where you actually become God. But God is this impersonal oneness. So he gave a more or less a Buddhist interpretation, but he reestablished the authority of the Vedas. But he gave an impersonal interpretation of the Vedas. So this was not ideal either, but it was a step in the right direction. So then comes Ramanujacharya, then Madhvacharya, and they defeated Sankaracharya's interpretation of the Vedas and reestablished the correct interpretation. And then after Madhvacharya came Lord Chaitanya, who finished off the cycle. So you see, in order to overcome a misinterpretation or a deviation, sometimes it takes time to reprogram people to understand what the correct understanding is. Just like people come to Krishna consciousness, it takes time for them to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, because we've been programmed to understand all kinds of atheistic and impersonal philosophies. Now, if you take a philosophy course in college, it's bewildering. You know, you have positivism, you have relativism, you have empiricism, you have scholasticism. These are all different philosophical interpretations of what is reality, who is God, who are we, what is time, and so forth. And they all have different points of view. And basically, after you finish that course in philosophy, or if you get a PhD in philosophy, you know how to explain a lot of things, but you don't understand anything. Would you agree? Have you ever taken a philosophy course?
No, but on Buddhism, you can know a lot and not know what it means.
Exactly. So, we see that Lord Shiva came as Sankaracharya. He's a devotee of Krishna. And he preached this impersonal philosophy to bewilder people, bewilder the Buddhists. And because of that, the Buddhists were more or less kicked out of India, and Vedic Dharma came back to India, but with a Buddhist type interpretation. So it says here that the truth about Lord Shiva is that he's always covered with three material coverings: Vaikarika, Taijasa, and Tamasa. Because of these three modes of material nature, he always associates with the external energy and egotism itself. And this is a quotation from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 88th chapter, 3rd verse. On the other hand, Lord Krishna, or Sri Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is situated beyond the range of material nature. Therefore, he is the Supreme Transcendental Person. He can see everything inside and outside. Therefore, he is the Supreme Overseer of all living entities. If someone takes shelter at his lotus feet and worships him, he also attains a transcendental position. And this is also from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 88th chapter, 5th verse. So, now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also talks about Lord Shiva. In fact, he spent a long time studying Shiva Tattva. And he says, the non-distinction between Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu is established by the fact that just as milk treated with acid turns into curd, so Godhead becomes a subservient when he himself attains a distinct personality by the addition of a particular element of adulteration. This personality has no independent initiative. The said adulterating principle is constituted of a combination of the stupefying quality of the diluting energy, meaning Maya, the quality of non-plenitude of the marginal potency, in other words, not having all the qualities of Lord Krishna. That therefore it's possible, when you don't have all the qualities of Lord Krishna, to be attracted by the material nature. And a slight degree of the ecstatic cognitive principle of the plenary spiritual potency. So you have a slight degree of the ecstatic plenary spiritual potency. In other words, it's not enough, not quite enough, to overcome the influence of Maya. He is the Lord of Jiva, but yet partakes of the nature of a separated portion of Govinda. So he's talking about Shiva here. So in this way, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur defines the position of Lord Shiva with 3 points. Number one, he's adulterated by a slight touch of Maya. He doesn't have all the qualities of Lord Krishna. And he only has a slight degree of the ecstatic quality of Krishna consciousness. So, although he's superior to the jiva, to us, but yet he only has a very partial part of Lord Krishna's perfection. So, this adulteration is the same as milk that turns into yogurt. Number one, Lord Shiva has some part of the stupefying or bewildering quality of Maya. Maya stupefies people. She makes people bewildered. So some part of that bewildering quality is present in Lord Shiva. This is one part of the constituent, which makes Shiva no longer Krishna. Krishna has none of it, but Shiva has some part of it. In other words, Krishna is never influenced by Maya. In fact, Maya is controlled completely by him. But Shiva is somewhat influenced by her. And number two, the quality of non-plenitude of the marginal potency. Marginal potency means jivas, and non-plenitude means limited. The jivas are limited. When we say nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam, it means that Krishna is the supreme eternal, but he's unlimited. And we are also eternal, but we are limited. We are limited, and he is unlimited. Similarly, Lord Shiva is not unlimited. In other words, he's limited. Apart from the above two qualities, Lord Shiva also takes two more qualities from Ramadevi, the spiritual potency. These are a slight degree of ananda, or bliss, and a little bit of the chit, or cognitive principle of the plenary supreme potency. So Lord Shiva has some portions of chit and ananda, Sat-Chit Ananda, but not in full. So Krishna has full potency of Sat-Chit Ananda. Lord Shiva has partial potency. So this is the explanation of milk that turns into curd. So we can not only understand our own self, but now also explain to others as to what is this difference in detail. In other words, simultaneously one and inconceivably different. So this is the difference between Shiva and Krishna. Okay, I'll tell you later on. Just So Shiva is the lord of the jivas, but he partakes of the nature of the jivas. That means he is somewhat influenced by Maya, and he doesn't have complete knowledge like Krishna. He has partial knowledge, and he doesn't have the complete ecstatic potency. He has just a partial ecstatic potency. Okay, so that's why this Jiva Tattva, the Shiva Tattva is difficult to understand because of his simultaneous oneness and difference. The difference is always going to be in quantity, and the oneness is always in terms of quality. So we're like that too. We're qualitatively one with the Lord, quantitatively different. So if we begin to understand that more clearly, then we can see that there is a major difference between Lord Shiva and Lord Krishna. So, then, okay, go ahead.
Grace Shila इसी भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय, नमाचार्य शिल हरिदास ठाकुर की जय, जयंती के हो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास गौर भक्तवृंद की जय, श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंवार कुंजी गौरांग की जय, लक्ष्मी वृंदावन की जय, नवद्वीप जगन्नाथ श्री राम की जय, गंगामणि यमुनामणि की जय, सतमहन की जय, Coming with the Lord of the Jai, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the Guru and Sri Lord of What time did we?
Hare Krishna. So now we're going to hear a few pastimes of Lord Shiva. So in South India, there's a place called Sri Saila. And Lord Shiva and his wife Durga lived there in the dress of Brahmanas. And when they saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they became very pleased. And Lord Shiva, dressed like a Brahmana, gave charity or alms to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and invited him to spend 3 days in a solitary place. And sitting there in that solitary place, they talked very confidentially. After talking with Lord Shiva, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his permission to leave and went to Kamakoshti Puri. Okay, so there's a picture of, there's a painting of Lord Shiva sitting very intimately next to Lord Chaitanya, and the two of them were talking very confidentially about the truth of Krishna consciousness. And actually they were hugging each other for 3 days. Hugging, yes. Okay, so there's another obviously the pastime of Mohini Murti is very significant also in understanding Lord Shiva, and we'll tell that in a second. So when there was the churning of the ocean of milk by the demons and the devotees, or the demigods, different things were churned out of the ocean. And the purpose of the churning was to get the elixir of immortality, or amritam. So when Dhanvantari, the incarnation of Lord Krishna as the original doctor of Ayurveda, came out with a container of amritam, or elixir of eternality. Immediately the asuras, or demons, stole it. And this was very dangerous because you don't want the demons to have immortality, especially in the material world. They do so much damage. So at that time, Krishna appeared in his transcendental form as Mohini Murti. Mohini Murti is, as her name says, the incarnation of illusion. And she was bewitchingly beautiful, stunningly beautiful. And because demons are always interested in pretty girls, they became overwhelmed by her beauty. And she, in a very clever way, asked them to give her the pot of nectar, and she would distribute it equally amongst the demons and the demigods. So they were so bewildered that they did that. However, she had no intention of giving anything to the demons. So she told the demons and the devotees to sit in straight lines, and she would begin to distribute the drops of nectar to the demigods, and then she would give it to the demons. Well, there was one demon who could see through this ruse, and he tried to convince the other demons not to listen to her. It was all a trick. She was just going to give the nectar to the demigods, and the other demons were so much in bewilderment that they didn't believe him. So he disguised himself as a demigod and sat amongst the demigods. So when Mohini Murti was giving out the drops of nectar, when she came to the Rahu demon, she gave him a drop of the nectar to become immortal, but then she realized it was a demon, so then she assumed her form as Vishnu and cut off his head with the chakra, the atomic disc weapon of the Lord. And then the head of Rahu spun through space and became what's called an invisible planet today. So his head is immortal, but the drop did not go through his neck down to his body, so just his head is immortal. And he is a invisible planet, and according to the Vedas, whenever there's a eclipse of the sun or the moon, it's because of the Rahu planet. Okay, so Lord Shiva was not present when all of this happened, but he heard about it, and he heard how beautiful Krishna's Mohini Murti incarnation was. So after this pastime was over, Lord Shiva wanted to see Mohini Murti, so he went up to Krishna and he asked him, "Can you please show me your incarnation as Mohini Murti?" And Krishna smiled. And when he did show him that his incarnation as Mohini Murti, Shiva became overwhelmed with her beauty. And although he was there standing with his wife, Durga or Parvati, when he saw Mohini Murti, he tried to grab her, and she just ran away. And he forgot about his wife and just started running after Mohini Murti. So this just shows how Krishna's Maya is greater than Durga's Maya, because Lord Shiva forgot all about Durga and ran after Krishna's form of Mohini Murti. So, therefore, we can get an understanding now about the power of Krishna as compared to the power of Maya, or even the power of Lord Shiva. And there are many other pastimes of Lord Shiva and Lord Krishna, in which every time it's manifest that Lord Shiva's power is much greater than Lord Krishna's power is much greater than Lord Shiva's power. Also, one second, there's a little bit more information here. So there's a verse in the Brahma Samhita, Dipachareva hita santaram abhyupetya, Dipayate vivita hetu samana dharma, Yastadrik eva hicha vishnu taya vipati. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. And it says, when the flame of one candle is expanded to another candle and placed in a different position, it burns separately, and its illumination is as powerful as the original candles. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, expands himself in different forms as Vishnu, who is equally luminous, powerful, and opulent. Let me worship that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. So this is a quotation from the Brahma Samhita, 5th chapter, 46th verse. The conclusion is that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are simply devotee incarnations who carry out orders. However, Lord Vishnu is the maintainer, is the personal feature of Lord Krishna. Lord Brahma said, I am engaged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to create, following his orders. Lord Shiva dissolves everything. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his form of Kshirodakshai Vishnu, maintains all the affairs of material nature. Thus, the supreme controller of the three modes of material nature is Lord Vishnu. So this is a quotation from the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.632. Lord Brahma gave this information to Devarsi Narada when he was receiving instructions from Lord Brahma to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma. After describing the universal form of the Lord, Lord Brahma explained that his position and Lord Shiva's position are controlled by Lord Vishnu. So, this is authoritative statements by Lord Brahma, and in the Brahma Samhita, explaining that he and Lord Shiva are simply the servants of Lord Krishna. And that Lord Vishnu, and Krishna in the form of Lord Vishnu, is the maintainer of everything in the material creation, including Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And that they simply follow the orders of the Lord. So this is a quotation from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 6th chapter, 32nd verse. Lord Brahma gave this information to Devarsi Narada when he was receiving instructions from Lord Brahma to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Krishna. After describing the universal form of the Lord, Lord Brahma explained that his position and Lord Shiva's position are controlled by Lord Vishnu. So, if we read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's many, many different references to Lord Shiva, and all of them are consistent that Lord Shiva is the eternal servant of Krishna. Now, of course, if you hear the explanations of the followers of Lord Shiva, they explain things in the opposite way, that Lord Krishna is the servant of Lord Shiva. Well, that is true. There's a famous verse in Padma Purana, Aradhananam sarvesam Vishnu Aradhanam param. One time, Durga or Parvati asked the question of Lord Shiva. She said, who's the best person to worship? And Lord Shiva answered, he said, well, Durga expected him to say that he himself, Shiva, is the best person to worship. But Lord Shiva said, of all personalities in the entire universe, the best person to worship is Lord Vishnu, or Krishna. He said, but even better than that is to worship whatever is in relationship to the Lord, and especially his devotee. So this is sort of like a circular explanation. The best person to worship, of course, is Lord Vishnu. But Lord Vishnu is very pleased when you also worship his devotee, or whatever is in relationship with him, like Govardhan, Vrindavan, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. So Lord Shiva is considered Vaishnavananam Yata Sambhu. He is the greatest devotee of Lord Krishna. Therefore, honoring Lord Shiva is a most worthy thing for a devotee. Therefore, we honor Lord Shiva. That's why we celebrate Shivaratri. Although Prabhupada says, even in Vrindavan in the time of Nanda Maharaj and Krishna, Nanda Maharaj also worshipped Lord Shiva on Shivaratri. But it was occasional. It was not necessarily every year. So Vaishnavas occasionally do Shiva Ratri celebration. Why? Because when Krishna is worshipped, all the incarnations of Krishna and expansions of Krishna are also worshipped simultaneously. So you don't have to specifically worship each one of Krishna's expansions. When Krishna comes, he comes with all his incarnations. So therefore, when he's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and he's protecting Arjuna, he's doing that in his form of Vishnu or Narayana. And therefore, when he picked up the broken wheel of the chariot and started spinning it and running toward Bhisma Pitamaha, Bhisma Pitamaha saw the Vishnu form of the Lord. Krishna doesn't kill people with his flute, but he does in his form of Narayana or Vishnu with his chakra. Okay, then we'll just read one more thing. So when Lord Chaitanya was traveling through South India, he visited, he went to Shiva Kanchi, and he visited the deity of, in the temple of Lord Shiva. And by his influence, Lord Chaitanya's influence, he converted all the devotees of Lord Shiva into Vaishnavas. So Shiva Kanchi is also known as Kanchipuram, or the Benares of southern India. In Shiva Kanchi, there are hundreds of temples containing symbolic representations of Lord Shiva. And one of these temples is said to be very, very old. So Lord Chaitanya visited that temple and turned all the devotees of Lord Shiva into Vaishnavas. And Lord Chaitanya also visited Tirupati. And there's a temple of Lord Ramachandra there. And it says that he offered his prayers and obeisances before Ramachandra, the descendant of King Raghu. Everywhere Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, his influence astonished everyone. He next arrived at the temple of Pananashinga, where the Lord is, and therefore Lord Chaitanya is so merciful as to visit these places. And then, of course, he offered ecstatic prayers to Lord Nisringa. And the people were astonished to see Lord Chaitanya's influence. And then he goes to Kanchipuram. You can visit Kanchipuram today also in South India. I've been there. And you have that's where Ramanujacharya was, I think. That was his hometown. And he converted all the devotees of Lord Shiva into Vaishnavas. So that's not a strange thing, because Lord Shiva himself is a Vaishnava. So to be converted into a Vaishnava is not a strange thing for the followers of Lord Shiva. However, there has been what you would call animosity between the Shaivites and the Vaishnavas. In fact, the Shaivite Chola king tried to kill Ramanujacharya. So that type of animosity has been there for a long time, and that dates back to the ancient times, in Vedic times, when Daksha insulted Lord Shiva, and then there was a fight between the followers of Lord Shiva and the Brahmanas who were supporting Daksha. Since that time, that sort of latent animosity has been there, and sometimes it manifests its ugly face, and sometimes it's not manifest. But obviously, when Lord Chaitanya met Lord Shiva in Shisaila, they were very intimate, and there was absolutely no hint of any animosity between them. So therefore, for devotees of Lord Shiva and devotees of Lord Vishnu or Vaishnavas, there's no reason for any animosity except illusory concepts that enter into their minds. So, and then also at Kumbhakarna Kapala, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw a great lake, and then the holy place named Shiva Kshetra, where a temple of Lord Shiva is located. Kumbhakarna is the name of the brother of Ravana. At the present moment, the city of Kumbhakarna Kapala is known as Kumbhakonam. It is situated 24 miles northeast of the city of Tanjore. There are 12 temples of Lord Shiva located at Kumbhakonam, as well as 4 Vishnu temples and 1 Brahman. Shiva Kshetra, within the city of Tanjore, is situated near a big lake known as Shiva Ganga. At this place is a large temple of Lord Shiva known as Brihat Ishwara Shiva Mandira. So you see, Lord Chaitanya did visit many temples of Shiva when he went through South India. Okay, so are there any questions you'd like to ask about some of these topics? Yes.
So you have mentioned difference between Shiva and us. One of the difference you had mentioned, we die but Shiva don't. So is it in Shiva is in the material world, Shiva, that you are comparing? Because spiritual world Shiva is eternal. So what is the right context here to understand this?
Shiva, even in the material world, is Amara. He doesn't die. Lord Brahma dies.
Yes.
Lord Shiva doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. See, Shiva Tattva is very special. And if you begin to think about it carefully, you see how there are amazing things in this universe, things that beyond our imagination. However, if we study from the point of view of quality and quantity, we see that it's possible to be one with Krishna in quality, but vastly different in quantity. So when, in the story of Mohini Murti, we see that the bewildering power of Lord Shiva far different than Maya, far greater than Maya. Therefore, even Lord Shiva is bewildered by Mohini Murti, whereas he's not bewildered by Durga. So you have to understand from the point of view of quality and quantity, the similarity and the difference. Yes, Mayapur.
When you said like Kumbhakarna, like they had like a big foot, was it like the foot of Kumbhakarna or?
Where did you get the idea of a foot in the name?
No, when like you said how like they had the temples and like they had a big foot.
No, a big lake.
Leg?
Yeah, lake.
Lake?
Yeah, in that.
Lake. I thought.
Lake. I didn't say leg. Lake. It's in the city in South India called Tanjore. It's situated near a big lake, Lake, known as Shiva Ganga. And at that place, there's a large temple of Lord Shiva, known as Brihat Ishwara Shiva Mandira. And Lord Chaitanya went there on his trips through South India.
Did he walk?
He walked. There were no trains, no airplanes, nothing at that time. It's over 500 years ago. Huh?
Did they have bikes?
No, they had bullock carts, but no, he walked. He walked from Jagannath Puri all the way to Gujarat and then over North India through Vrindavan, through Benares, back to Bengal. So,
Did he ever go through the Himalayas?
it doesn't say he did, but I mean, it's not that he couldn't, but it doesn't say he did. Yes. Not to my knowledge. Maybe he did, but not to my knowledge.
So Prabhuji, you have explained about the plenary expansions and plenary partial expansions of
Yes.
Krishna.
And partial plenary expansion.
So Prabhuji, one example for plenary expansion is Balram. Is it correct?
That's a plenary expansion. There's no difference
plenary
between
expansion.
Balaram and Krishna, except that Balaram is whitish and Krishna is darkish.
Yes. And for plenary partial expansion is Vishnu, Lord Vishnu.
No, okay, so whenever we're talking about any expansion, there's two aspects to it. There's quality and quantity. So, qualitatively, Vishnu and Krishna are non-different. Quantitatively, if you study the 64 qualities of Krishna, Lord Vishnu or Narayana have 60 qualities of the Lord. They don't have all 64. Okay, so you always have to look in terms of quality and quantity. Qualitatively, they're the same. Quantitatively, they're different.
So Balram has all 64 same.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so, okay. And what is the example for plenary partial and partial expansion? Is it like Lord Ram?
Well, there are expansions of the Lord that are jivas also, but who receive an opulence of the Lord. And there are expansions of the Lord that are not jivas, they're Vishnu tattvas, but they receive an opulence of the Lord. So there's opulences, and or another word for it is vibhuti, and then there are plenary expansions that have the same power as the Lord. So there's power and opulence. So, for example, Vishnu has the same power as the Lord, but not all of the qualities of the Lord. And then there's some incarnations that have opulences, like Vyasadeva. He has literary power or opulence. So, if you want to know more about this, there's a chapter in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya that explains all the different qualities. Or it's also in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but there's a nice summary of it made by Prabhupada in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I can give you what chapter it is. I think it's chapter 80. And you can read that. And that explains all these different categories of incarnations. Mayapur.
This is like one about Hanuman. I don't know what. Hanuman had 5 heads. Like, he had like the incarnation of like Nrsingadev and
How do you know that? Where did you read that he has 5 heads? In a comic book? Where did you hear that?
like
Brahma Bole Chaturmukhe. So Brahma has 4 heads, right? Or at least our Brahma in this universe has 4 heads. Brahma Bole Chaturmukhe. Lord Shiva has 5 heads. Panchamukhe. Not Hanuman. He's called also Panchamukhe sometimes.
I think I just got confused.
Brahma bole Chaturmukhe. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Mahadeva Panchamukhe. Rama Rama Hare Hare. We chant that bhajan. And it describes Lord Shiva as having 5 heads. Okay? Yeah.
So you gave the story how Lord Shiva's wife asked Lord Shiva who is the best to worship.
Yeah.
So if someone asked that to Lord Krishna, would he say himself?
Well, Lord Krishna would say the following. He would say, Yomam evam asamudo janati purushottamaha sasarvavit bhajante imam sarva bhavana bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is a knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So that's what he would say. So he would say that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the one should be engaged in his devotional service, that is, worshiping him.
Thank you.
It's 15th chapter, 19th verse. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. Or he would say, Ham sarvasya prabhava matak sarvam pavartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. And that is 10th chapter, 8th verse. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So these are things that he's actually said. Okay, 10th chapter, 8th verse, 15th chapter, 19th verse. So yes, he would say worshiping him is the best thing. But we also have to consider the statement of Lord Shiva that even better than that is worshiping whatever is in relationship to the Lord. So that would include his devotee. And that would include Govardhan, that would include Tulsi, that would include Shalagram, Shila, etc. Okay? Any other questions? So we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, questions about the subject, about the Kirtan at Solar District.
Yes.
So we'll have every day? Every Saturday?
We'll see. We'll see. I can't say right now. Hare Krishna.
The last question.
You got one more question? Wow. What's your other question?
This one is about like Lord Shiva, how like Shankachuda